I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Michigan State Capitol Commission on January 27th. Our fearless leader had a little case of the norovirus, so he was under the weather. I think Bill has been on the commission 4 years also. He's been our chair for a couple years at least, and I don't think he's ever missed a meeting to chair, so he must be worried leaving me in charge. So, but I do call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome our newest member, Scott Starr, who has been started here in this beautiful building in 1992 in the clerk's office, and he has worked here ever since. In the clerk's office for members, and now in his current position as clerk of the house. So we welcome him, and he brings a great love of the Capitol and a great deal of knowledge. I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Chair Candler, Vice Chair Bauer,
Present.
Mr. Bowman,
Here.
Mr. Hobbs,
Here.
Mr. Oberlin,
Here.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
5 members are present.
Thank you. Our Capitol Commission rules state that elections for our officers, chair and vice chair, must be held at the first meeting of a 2-year session, which is the meeting that we're having today. So first on our order of business is I would like to ask for a nomination for chair for the next 2 years.
Nominate Bill Candler.
Commissioner Starr?
Can you turn on your mic, please?
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Bill Candler to serve as chair.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Commissioner Bowman. It's Bill Candler has been nominated as chair, supported by John Bowman for the position of chair. Would you call the roll, please, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Candler is absent. Chair Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bowman,
Yes.
Mr. Hobbs, Mr. Oberlin,
Yes.
Mr. Starr.
Yes.
5 yes votes.
Thank you. So Bill Candler has been reelected as our chair. He's done just a marvelous job. And I just have to add, I don't think any of us really realize, except our staff, how much time Chairperson Candler puts in this volunteer position. So we thank him for that and are glad that he will be leading us again for 2 years. Is there a nomination for vice chair? Commissioner Oberlin?
I'd like to nominate you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Is there support?
Support.
Support from Commissioner Hobbs. Secretary, Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mr. Candler is absent. Chair Bauer,
Yes.
you hesitated for a moment. Mr. Bowman, Mr. Hobbs, Mr. Oberlin,
Yes.
Mr. Starr. 5 yes votes.
Thank you. Joan Bauer has been elected as vice chair again, and I do thank my colleagues for your vote of support. Thank you. Our next meeting date will be March 3rd, which is a Monday at 11 o'clock. And are there any concerns with that date? So everyone can make that date. Good. So that is our next meeting. We have our last meeting minutes are from December. And are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? And if not, is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Hobbs, supported by Commissioner Oberlin. Secretary, please call the roll.
Chair Candler is absent. Chair Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Bowman,
Yes.
Mr. Hobbs,
Yes.
Mr. Oberlin,
Yes.
Mr. Starr. 5 yes votes.
Thank you. And then next on our agenda, I would like to ask our Executive Director, Rob Blackshaw, to join us and give us an update on the many exciting things happening in this beautiful building.
Good morning, Commission. Thank you for your time this morning. Scott, always great to see you. Welcome back. As I mentioned to Scott before the meeting, I always have 12 to 14 projects going on, but I'll spare you guys the time and talk about 6 or 7 of the key projects we have going on, plus a couple other things worth note today. In your folders, there's a handout which talks about the Rotunda glass floor project that we're getting ready to start. We have brought on to our project team one of our registrars and with Brian Page, and he has put this together, and we think it's very valuable that we start adding registrars to our project teams because we are in the middle of what we call a documentation phase at the Capital Commission. A lot of the projects that we've completed were really good with the documentation that we have had, but we did come to find, especially during our Rotunda restoration project, that some of the materials that we had were outdated. So what we're trying to do is be preservation forward thinking and making sure that we document all the projects that we're doing currently with film and pictures and documents and making sure that it's recorded with all the history in place. So not only does it tell the story when we're in the middle of a restoration project that we are active with, but in 10, 20, 30 years when the next folks take over, it'll be nice for them to look back and say, hey, look what we're doing. And before I go into projects, Valerie had the opportunity to go out and visit Carrie Chartkoff this summer, and we have over 12 hours of recorded audio of oral histories. And believe me, that's one person that you really want to record the history because she has touched so many pieces of what we do here, whether it's the Battle Flag program, the portraits, the restoration of the Capitol, the formation of the tour guide service after we took it over from DTMB. So those are a lot of the things we're trying to focus on as far as documentation is moving forward, and you guys will hear a lot more of that moving forward also. But in future meetings, I think it might be good to share clips with you and the crowd that comes to show, just so you get to see what we see, and it is pretty exciting when you get to hear from the horse's mouth, per se, of all the experience that has been gained and we're sharing with our folks as well. So the Rotunda glass floor, as I mentioned in the materials that you have before you, we are getting ready to start that project here in the next few weeks. In fact, Lucid Glass Studio, who is our vendor, will be on site this Wednesday, and we're going to start talking about the logistics of the project itself. We're actually going to install a piece of the glass floor with the new specifications that we developed and to make sure that they match, 100%. We've approved mock-ups and everything else, but putting an actual piece back into the floor and then looking at it will really tell a good story. We're going to be going through the entire project scope with our installer and synchronize this project, and it's going to kind of fall like this. We're going to put up a construction wall in the second week of February. Lansing Glass Company has come in, they'll start removing pieces in a quadrant. So we'll close off a quadrant of the glass floor at a time, therefore keeping 3/4 of it open the entire time so tour groups can come through. Even the walls that we're putting up will have windows put in it so the general public will be able to look into it. We've even gone to the point of putting in a lower window for the kids and a higher window for the adults so they can actually see the pieces being taken out. Once the pieces are taken out in each quadrant, we will go to the ground floor underneath and paint the metal surface underneath so it's clean and fresh. Once the first pieces are delivered, and we are expecting about 175 pieces every 6 to 8 weeks being done, we will install those, put in new glazing, and then move to the next quadrant and start the process over. It sounds simple the way I put it, but it is pretty intricate. It is surgery when we deal with this 976-piece glass floor that we have, which is one of our crown jewels, so we're taking this pretty darn serious, as you can tell. Anyway, it's exciting to talk about this. As you see the documents before you, please review those and let us know if you have any questions moving forward. We also added a tab on our website, which is illustrated on the last page of the document, that will be updated throughout the entire project with updated photos, updated narratives, timelines, just to give everyone an idea of what's happening while we're completing this project. The next project I'll talk about is the fourth floor decorative paint. As you're well aware, the fourth floor west side has taken a lot of damage into the ceiling, and we have made tremendous progress. Finalize all the designs in our work scope. In fact, the bids are out right now, and we're expected to review next week of what vendors and decorative painting company will be brought on. The ceiling will be removed in that area, and then we'll start repainting the entire surfaces of the fourth floor west ceiling. There's one office on the third floor, which is the Senate Tech Room, which we'll be working on. But our hope is to mobilize all the contractors in March. The work will commence through the summer, hopefully finishing in August, depending on what they find or don't find. But the target is to finish in March, start removing scaffolding and clean it up, so by Labor Day, when the legislature returns from summer recess, that project will be complete. But I will definitely keep you updated on all the progress as that moves forward as well. The room that we sit in right now, the House of Popes room, the House of Reps just upgraded the camera and the screen, and we need to do some decorative painting. I'm not going to ask you to do a 180 and look up on the ceiling, but that's where the screen was put back in there. Once that's complete, all this padded walls and acoustical walls, you can see the big gray dot up on the wall there, are 35 years old. They're very dirty. The fabric is starting to fail, so we are going to replace those this summer. We have picked the matching color. It's all been approved. We work with the acoustical tile company, so those are all being prepared. But we're going to need 2 or 3, maybe even 4 weeks of time when there's no meetings in here. So this summer, again, will be when we install these acoustical panels. And the goal is, again, tear these down, install the new ones, clean it up. So by Labor Day, when the legislature returns and want to use these rooms, that project is completed as well. The next project I want to talk about is an ongoing project. It's our 3-dimensional model called the HBIM, the Historical Building Information Model. It's hard to talk about, so I do plan on bringing in a screen at the next meeting in March to really give you guys an illustration of what it is. But imagine having a 3-dimensional model, almost like a video game that you can navigate. And when you walk through the building, for instance, you can walk into the governor's office and get a live temperature or live humidity. You can click on a piece of furniture, it'll give you the history of the furniture. You can click on a portrait, it'll not only give you the history of the portrait, but the history of how the portrait was painted. You can click on different pieces of mechanical equipment, it'll take you right to the work order system and let you know, is there an open work order in this room or is there not? This 3-dimensional model is going to become a portal for the entire Capitol facility staff. In fact, we just brought on 4 people to be trained, 1 from each department, and it's already starting to yield benefits. For instance, one of our mechanical team, and as you're aware, on this 3-dimensional model, you can see all the mechanical piping behind the walls. So if there's ever a leak on the wall, you no longer have to tear the whole wall apart. You can look at this thing 3-dimensionally or digitally and kind of see where the plumbing is behind it. Now, we all know that most plumbing leaks happen at a joint, so you can probably narrow it down to the nearest joint. Then you could drill a small hole into the historic fabric, put a borescope camera in there, and do more of an investigation, which really takes away a lot of the damage. But as we were going through this, our mechanic says, hey, can we put in our shutoff valves to this? So shutoff valves are a key piece of equipment here. If you think there's 150 feet of piping and there's a leak on a 3rd floor, where do you shut the water off? We all know where these locations are, but it would be great to know, even if our central control operators on the weekend could pull up this model, know where the shutoff valves are. They could physically go out themselves within 5 or 10 minutes of the identified leak while the mechanicals are on site. That was such a great idea. This is the kind of thing that's starting to yield right away. So we're now meeting with the original engineers from this model, which is Loring Engineers, who helped us during the infrastructure project, in collaboration with Quinn Evans Architects, and we're going to start adding this level of detail to it, so when we do navigate, it'll really eliminate the damage that's done to the historic fabric. Again, it's hard to explain. A picture does tell 1,000 words here, so in March I will really walk you through this, show a couple examples of the level of detail that's already in there. So I'll move on from there. The next project I'll talk about is one that's going to happen this summer, and it's one that's going to be very visible to the public and to everyone in the building. We're going to start replacing the windows in the governor's suite that are on the east. These windows we're replacing are ballistic style windows, so they're thicker than a lot of the other windows in the building. They were put in 35 years ago during the restoration of the Capitol, but we're starting to realize that the material between the panes of glass are starting to deteriorate. So we thought we'd be proactive before they're no longer doing their job, is to start replacing these pieces of glass. Again, this is a project that's hard to disguise, as you'll see cranes or people taking out windows in the governor's suite this summer. But we're working diligently with Chrisman Construction, our partners, to work out the logistics so we can reduce the downtime or the time it takes to remove a window and replace a window in the whole suite. So much more to come on that, but it's something I wanted to get out in front because, again, this is a project that everyone's going to be looking at and asking what we're doing, so I want to share that with you all now. Also this summer, I've mentioned in previous meetings that the chamber chandelier motors and chains need to be replaced. As I said, we talked about this and did an inspection last year and realized that the chains and motors that hold up the gasoliers, or the main chamber chandeliers, were last replaced in 1974. That's 50 years ago. I'm not saying that they're in bad shape, but they've been painted over to a point where it's making it very difficult, if not impossible, to do a proper inspection. So we thought at this point, for safety being the number one factor, let's replace these chain falls and motors that hold these giant chandeliers up. Secondly is definitely the preservation of them, because we don't want to make sure they get damaged either, but I would be remiss without saying it's the safety of people first. Once that is complete, it should be another 50 years of service without having to be replaced again at a minimum. So it's a great project. The next project we're going to start working on, if you remember, last year we worked with a landscape architect to update the landscape master plan. We know that over the last couple of years, there's been some of the large maples and some other trees on Capitol Avenue that the fell limbs have really done some damage to the lawn, not only the trees. So we're now starting to think it's time to remove these trees. So what we're going to do, we're going to set up a meeting with the landscape architect that help us put this plan together and start putting in a phasing plan of what trees to remove and then what trees we're going to replace back according to the plan. So in the next meetings to come, I will present to you before we actually execute any work, is to talk to the commission. Here's the trees we're going to remove. Here's the ones we're going to replace, where they're going to be placed, what type of trees they are, and why the selections were made. But that's a big undertaking as well. As we know, the lawn has thinned out, or the trees have thinned out over the years, but it's now time to start replacing those. So again, I will share that with you guys all prior to. This next project I want to talk about are the Senate chamber ceiling. This project isn't going to take place until summer of '26. But there's so much research involved in putting this together and logistics just to execute this plan. Not only are we going to be painting and cleaning the ceiling of the Senate chamber ceiling, we've got to put in a scaffold somehow that won't interfere with the work that goes on below. So it's a lot of logistics working on that. We have a fire system called VESDA, which stands for the Very Early Smoke Detection Alarm, and it's not working as well as we thought. So while we're up in the ceiling, we're going to work on that fire system to make sure that the Very Early Smoke Detection system is working. This will be the first time we can take every single glass pane out of the ceiling, clean it properly, along with the light panels that are above it as well. So there's a lot of little things that we can touch while we're in there, which is why we're planning over a year in advance for this. So you will hear a lot more from me. I will be working a lot with the Secretary of the Senate to make sure that what we coordinate to complete this job is good and acceptable. And then what we'll probably do is push the House chamber ceiling for 2028, and I think that's a great date to work as well, because we're trying to pick also summers that are election cycles, that there'll be more opportunity to work in the chambers that won't interfere with the legislative business that's in there. The next thing I wanted to talk about is we're looking for a new portrait conservation partner. We currently used Ken Katz Art Studio in Detroit. But since our current conservator, he is nearing retirement age, and we do have the need for a portrait conservation in addition to all the work we do here. So after conducting a number of interviews, and this is Barb Thamudo, Josh Reisner, and Shayla Croto have all looked at different ones. There is a firm out of Chicago called Baumgartner Fine Art Restoration. They're located on the northwest side of Chicago in Edison Park neighborhood. It is currently Chicago's oldest conservation studio, and they're very well renowned. We're actually going to pay a visit to them, I think, in the end of February, just to make sure that everything lines up with our needs, just as we did as we vetted the vendor Lucid Art Glass Studio for our glass floor. We take this very serious, as you know, with our portrait conservation, and if we ever are to ship a portrait somewhere, we want to make sure it's going to a real proper place. So I just wanted to mention that to everyone in advance. Again, you'll hear much more, and I'll even send you all a little bit of information in your emails. They'll talk about Baumgartner conservation information, and it links to a YouTube channel so you can kind of see some of the work that they do that we will be part of. The next thing on my list to talk about is, it's called New Keys for the Capitol event. So this Friday, as you're well aware, we received a new piano from David Kohler, who is our old piano tuner. This is an Everett piano. It's a Michigan manufactured and Michigan restored piano. It is being rededicated to the Capitol this Friday, as we call it, New Keys to the Capitol. We're going to have David talk about the history of the piano and why it's placed back in the Capitol, being in Michigan. We're going to have a concert pianist play for 20 minutes, followed by an oboist and a piano accompaniment, and then followed by a light jazz duo for another 20 minutes. So it's going to be really nice. As we say, we're on the glass floor, which we can also talk about that day. But I was here for rehearsals last week, and just to forget how wonderful the sounds are, and then you're looking up at one of the best views in the state of Michigan at the same time. What a treat. So I'm hoping that everyone who's able to come will also be able to share that story, as in life, you know, it's all about the memories we make. Well, this will be one memory to make for sure. So if you're available, please come. We'd love to have you. This takes place this Friday, the 31st, and it starts at 10 a.m. Next thing to talk about is, we all know that the State of the State is coming up on February 26th. The entrance again will be in Heritage Hall. We had great success last year with that, and nothing but great anecdotal feedback. We are moving the check-in tables up at the north vestibule, which will help with some traffic based on feedback as well. But we're excited to work with the Speaker's Office and all the folks involved with this project and offering Heritage Hall. So it's, again, the reason I really brought it up is just say Heritage Hall has really yielded great benefits. The use of it is getting bigger and bigger every day. We are booking a year out, as you guys are well know, and it's one of the best tickets in town. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that with you all. I have nothing to add at this point, but I'm open for questions.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Hobbs?
Just a couple, actually. Actually, a question and then actually, it could be two questions. You had talked about the HBIM,
Yep.
which I think is fascinating. I just wanted to kind of get a sense. You had talked about it from the perspective of, you know, someone touring the Capitol and being able to pull up certain items. How do you see this working virtually for those who can't be in the Capitol?
So what we are working through right now, there are some security parameters that they don't have firewalls put up yet. So before we open up to the general public, we need to make sure that the firewalls are put in place, because we don't want to open up 100% of our infrastructure to the general public. The name of the company that puts this together is called Autodesk, and we are working with them directly because we are leading the nation right now in historical buildings and what we're doing with it. Mount Vernon is second, and they started it, and we've now surpassed them. But we're getting a lot of national attention of what we're doing with this model and how it's going. But yes, our goal is in the future is to add virtual tours that someone could come in and walk through the building, the common areas, the chambers, the Supreme Court, and see it from a digital perspective. But until we
Using
get those,
this model.
I'm sorry?
Using this model?
Using this model. So you know how people can navigate video games with a controller, and it's almost the same concept by the time we turn it over to the general public. They'll be able to navigate, walk through the building and go into certain areas, and then click on items that'll bring up all types of information. So that's the end goal. We're working really hard to get there quicker than later. But again, there's some security things we have to work through yet.
Understood. One, I want to say, I love this handout that you put in our folders. I'm kind of like flipping through it, and I saw we used to have a cigar stand. Like, is that coming back? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, we're very fortunate. Again, with Brian Page as the registrar and Shayla Croto as our art registrar, they're going to be attached to all of our projects now, because when we bring in the academia and all of our skilled trades and put those two together, we have one hell of a team, pardon my French. And to help tell the story better, we need all the folks on our team to do that, because as I said before, we have a very intellectually diverse staff, and they all do their things very, very well. But when we collaborate, as you can see, we can put out some great material to tell the stories for futures to come.
Well, if you need a commissioner to spearhead the cigar stand, just let
Okay.
Support.
Well noted. Thank you, Commissioner.
Are there other questions, comments? Commissioner Oberlin?
Thank you. Just had a question about how the first weekend hours went in quite a few years. How did it go?
The weekend hours went good. We did, I think, just about 50 people show up, which was pretty good. I think we are working on our marketing to make sure that we advertise that. And even on the weekends that we're not, we're going to put up sandwich board signs on the outside that'll talk about the next time it's available on the weekends, and a QR code that'll do it. But everything went well. I know our tour guide staff was pretty happy with the success, and even the security said it was a great time for them to get used to the crowds coming back on the weekends as well, since they haven't had them in a while. So we have one coming up next weekend. So we'll report after that as well.
Any other questions? Just a couple comments, and I've said this will be a repeat, because I've said it probably 10 times in the last couple of years, but I can't say how proud I am of our building and the fact that our state we do preventative maintenance, we're looking ahead, we're restoring and doing what we should all be doing on our own homes to prevent damage in the future. But I just want to commend our staff for having a plan. And the people of Michigan, I'm always amazed when I'm here and people are touring. They are so impressed. I had a group of women here, a book club, in the fall, and these are people who've lived in this area for years, but they hadn't been in the Capitol in years, and we did a tour. They just could not get over how beautifully maintained, and really how beautiful our Capitol is. So again, I can't thank you enough. And we have to thank the legislature for continuing to appropriate the funds, because that's a lot of the reason that we are able to do this. So I just wanted to say that. The other thing, I love our Facebook posts, whether it be they're interesting, they're short, they catch your attention, whether it be for the piano dedication we're doing, the Statehood Day. So I just want to commend again. I think in this day and age, I mean, even if I'm looking at Facebook posts at my age, but social media is so important as a communication tool. So just who's ever doing that, great job.
Appreciate that. It is worth mentioning that we have key people who have considered, we have a small internal marketing team together, because we know the outreach that we can receive by using social media. So we put together a small group, and we look at this very, very closely, and making sure that it's just not one topic either. We're trying to broaden all the topics that are out there, because we do touch so much. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other business that needs to come before us? Commissioner Bowman?
Thank you. As we look forward to the future of the Capitol, I'd like to just thank the commission over the past 2 years for the work that it's done. I have been coming into this building on a regular basis for over 35 years. And today, right now, is the best shape this Capitol and these grounds have ever been in my tenure, and maybe in the history of this great historic building. So I would like to commend your staff, Rob, for all of, just as Joan has said, all of the work that they've done. And I'd also like to commend the commission for its role in keeping attention and focus on the Capitol building and the grounds. My job, I spent over 30 years working for the legal division of the Legislative Service Bureau. So, and I always loved, walking over into this great building and thinking, I get to work here. This is really, really cool. Someone once described the 50 state houses in the country as 50 incubators of democracy. I love that, too. So I had a chance to work in the most important public building in the state for an incubator of democracy that just rang to me in this historic building. And that was just an amazing experience. I was the director of the legal division, and sometimes I'd get pulled into issues that the legislature had a particular interest in. And one of those was the creation of a Michigan State Capitol Commission to oversee the Capitol building and the grounds. So I got pulled in and I drafted that legislation, working closely with former chair and one of our state's great statesmen, Gary Randall, on helping to put that together. So it was kind of a treat to come full circle on legislation that I drafted back in the day to then ultimately serve on the commission. And I would have to say that legislation has been just such a resounding success in my view. I think it did what it was intended to do, which is to call attention to this great building and how important this building is to the state of Michigan, and to maintain it for not only for right now, but for the future. And that's why I love how innovative the staff has been in preserving history, finding new ways to tell the story of Michigan. And I would say that I think that the commission has far exceeded what it had been hoped to do. It had been hoped to bring attention to the building, to bring attention to the grounds, and the grounds themselves are in the best shape that they've ever been in. But beyond that, it's brought this focus of people who care about this building, care about Michigan, care about this institution, the legislature and the governor and the role it has on all of the citizens, and bring it to a focal point for now and for the future. I'd like to welcome Scott Starr to the commission. I've known Scott for many, many years. He's a good man and will do an excellent job serving on this commission. So the future of the commission is bright. But as we are thinking about going forward, as we certainly should, I just wanted to let the commission know how much of a privilege it has been for me to work with the commission, and it will do great things going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for always working so closely with me on all of our projects. Thanks.
You are very welcome. And I can't say enough about the role that John Bowman has played in the Capitol Commission. You heard the history, his dedication, his love, knowledge, not only of the legislative process, but of this building. And he took the lead in a wonderful project that we hope still goes forward, which is our Park Michigan project. And John, that really would not have happened without John taking the lead in that. And so we again, hopefully we'll have him back for ribbon cutting someday, but we're very hopeful for that. But thank you for all that you have done, Commissioner Bowman. Is there any other business to come before us? Any other commissioner comments? Okay, and then is there any public comment? Anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, moved by Commissioner Hobbs, supported by Commissioner Starr. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.